My sister didn't just want my house. She wanted to see me break. She wanted to stand on the balcony of my multi-million-dollar beach estate and watch me pack my life into a rusted sedan while she sipped expensive wine I paid for. She thought she was the ultimate chess player, seizing a foreclosed asset from her failing younger brother. But what she didn't realize is that in the world of high-stakes real estate, perception is a dangerous weapon, and I had been sharpening mine for months. By the time the clock hit 9 a.m. and that bank VP made the call she had been begging for, the trap wasn't just set. It was already terminal. Let's get one thing straight. I've always been the quiet one in the family. While my sister, Alina, was busy posting her fake luxury lifestyle on Instagram and bleeding our parents' inheritance dry, I was grinding. I built a firm that handled distressed assets. I knew the law, I knew the banks, and most importantly, I knew exactly how greedy Alina could get if she smelled blood in the water. The house in question was a masterpiece. A 6-bedroom glass and cedar marble perched right on the edge of the Pacific. It was my sanctuary, but to Alina, it was a trophy. She had spent years making snide comments about how I didn't deserve such a place. So, when I intentionally let a rumor slip at Thanksgiving that my firm was underwater and the beach house was headed for foreclosure, I saw her eyes light up with a predatory glint. She didn't offer help. She didn't ask if I was okay. Instead, she spent the next 3 months working behind my back. She used a shady connection at a title company to file emergency paperwork, claiming I was mentally unfit to manage the property and that as the next of kin, she was stepping in to save the family asset from the bank. I played the part perfectly. I let her serve me papers at my own front door. I acted devastated. I let her watch me carry out boxes of books while she walked through the halls with a measuring tape, already planning which walls she was going to tear down. "It's for the best, Brooklyn," she had sneered, leaning against the marble countertop. "You clearly couldn't handle the pressure of this lifestyle. I'm doing you a favor by taking this burden off your hands before the sheriff shows up to toss you out." I didn't argue. I just looked at her, my eyes watering just enough to be convincing, and handed her the heavy brass keys. "You have no idea what you're taking on, Alina," I whispered. She laughed. It was a sharp, ugly sound. "I'm taking on a win, honey. That's all I see." She moved in that Friday. By Saturday, she was throwing a housewarming party, inviting our entire extended family to witness her triumph over her failed brother. She told everyone I had gambled the money away and she had swooped in to pay off the arrears. It was a lie, of course. I hadn't missed a single payment. But I had moved the mortgage into a very specific type of high-interest corporate holding account that required a manual release. She spent the weekend lounging by the infinity pool, posting photos with captions about hard work and manifestation. She had no clue that the bank's automated systems were already flagging the unauthorized transfer of title she had attempted. Sunday night, I stayed in a modest hotel 5 miles away, watching her live stream from my living room. I checked my watch. 9 a.m. Monday was the deadline for the bank's vice president of private wealth to perform the weekly audit. The Monday morning sun was hitting the floor-to-ceiling windows of my beach house when the first domino tipped. Alina was likely still in bed, probably hungover from the 3 cases of vintage champagne she'd raided from my cellar over the weekend. She thought she was the queen of the coast, but she had failed to read the fine print on the emergency conservatorship filing she'd used to hijack the deed. In her rush to steal the asset, she hadn't realized that by claiming legal responsibility for the property to save it from foreclosure, she had inadvertently signed a personal guarantee for the underlying debt. At exactly 9:01 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from Marcus, the vice president of private wealth at my bank. He'd been my fraternity brother in college and one of my closest advisors for a decade. The text was simple. "The Eagle has landed. Initiating the call now." I sat in my hotel room, sipping a black coffee, and imagined the scene. Alina would be startled awake by the ringing of the landline, a line she hadn't disconnected because she wanted the aesthetic of an old-school coastal mansion. She'd pick it up, expecting a decorator or maybe a journalist she'd tried to pitch her success story to. Instead, she got Marcus, and Marcus didn't do small talk. "Is this Alina?" he would have asked, his voice like cold flint. I knew his script. He was calling to inform the new primary stakeholder that the temporary injunction she'd filed had triggered a global default clause. You see, the beach house wasn't just a house. It was held under a complex corporate shell used as collateral for a $1.2 million short-term bridge loan I'd opened 3 weeks prior. By seizing the house and claiming I was unfit, Alina had legally stepped into my shoes. But she didn't just get the ocean view, she got the debt. And because she had filed paperwork claiming I had abandoned the financial obligations, the bank had the right to accelerate the entire balance. Back at the house, Alina was likely screaming. I can picture her clutching a silk robe, pacing the Turkish rugs, trying to explain that there must be a mistake. "I'm the owner now," she would have yelled. "I saved this house from foreclosure?" And Marcus would have calmly replied, "Ma'am, there was never a foreclosure notice issued by this bank. Mr. Brooklyn's accounts were in perfect standing. However, since you have filed a sworn affidavit stating he is no longer the responsible party and that you have assumed control of the estate, you are now liable for the immediate repayment of the $1.2 million lien. We require a wire transfer by the close of business today, or we will begin the actual foreclosure process against you." The beauty of the trap was its legality. She had committed fragmented fraud, a term we use when someone tries to steal an asset by misrepresenting the owner's status. She thought she was being clever by saving the house, but the bank saw a stranger trying to take over a high-value security. By 10:30 a.m., my sister began calling me. I let it ring and ring and ring. I wanted her to feel that icy, hollow pit in her stomach that she tried to give me when she tossed my boxes onto the driveway. I finally picked up on the 12th attempt. "Brooklyn, you have to tell them," the bank called. "They're saying I owe them over $1 million. They said if I don't pay, they're putting a lien on my own condo and my car. Tell them it's your debt." I leaned back against the headboard of my hotel bed, a small, cold smile playing on my lips. "I don't know what you're talking about, Alina. You told the court I was incompetent. You told the family I was a failure. You wanted the house. Well, congratulations, you got it, all of it." The silence on the other end of the line was heavy, thick with the realization that she had walked straight into a mechanical trap. Alina's voice, usually so sharp and condescending, had devolved into a frantic, high-pitched stammer. "Brooklyn, you don't understand. I don't have $1 million. My accounts... I used my savings to renovate the guest suite this weekend. I bought furniture. You have to fix this." I checked my watch. 11:15 a.m. "Alina, you filed a sworn affidavit. You told the judge I was financially unstable and that you were the solvent protector of the family legacy. The bank isn't looking at me anymore. They're looking at the person who claimed legal guardianship of the deed. That's you." I hung up before she could beg. I knew exactly what she was doing next. She would be calling our parents, sobbing, trying to spin a story about how I had tricked her. But I had already handled that. 3 days ago, I'd sent a certified folder to our parents' attorney containing every single bank statement from the last 5 years, proving my solvency, alongside a recorded video of Alina bragging about how she was going to strip the house from my cold, dead hands. By noon, the housewarming guests she'd invited for the week-long celebration began to trickle out. I watched from a parked car across the street as our cousins and aunt loaded their suitcases into their SUVs, looking confused and embarrassed. Alina was standing on the lawn, her hair a mess, screaming at a process server who had just handed her a formal notice of acceleration of debt. In the United States, when you commit mortgage fraud by misrepresenting a homeowner's status to seize a title, the bank doesn't just ask for the money back. They flag you to the feds. Marcus had already initiated a suspicious activity report. Alina wasn't just facing a $1.2 million debt, she was facing a federal investigation into title fraud. I watched her through the tinted glass of my car. She looked small. She looked like the bully who finally realized the kid she was picking on owned the playground. She tried to call the police to report me for extortion, but when the officers arrived, they looked at her paperwork, looked at the bank's lien, and told her it was a civil matter. Then they saw the notice to quit I had filed electronically the moment she signed that affidavit. "Ma'am," the officer said, his voice echoing across the quiet beach street. "This document says you claimed the owner was incompetent, but the owner has provided medical and financial proof that he is not. This means your filing was fraudulent. You have 2 hours to vacate the premises before we arrest you for criminal trespass." Alina collapsed onto the manicured grass. The queen of the coast was crumbling. She had spent her whole life trying to leapfrog over my hard work, thinking that a few legal loopholes and a lot of arrogance could replace a decade of discipline. I put the car in gear and slowly drove past her. I didn't stop. I didn't roll down the window. I just let her see me. I let her see the brother she called a failure driving away while she sat on a lawn she no longer had the right to stand on. But the real anatomy of revenge wasn't just taking my house back. It was the fact that the $1.2 million bridge loan, it was real. But I had already set up a secondary corporation to buy that debt from the bank at a discount the moment it went into technical default due to her fraud. Which meant by 2 p.m. I didn't just own the house again. I owned her. The final hour had arrived. By 4 p.m., the sun began to dip toward the Pacific horizon, casting long, golden shadows across the driveway where Alina's life was scattered in designer suitcases and half-packed trash bags. She was sitting on the curb, her face streaked with mascara, looking at the house like it was a ghost. I pulled my car into the driveway, coming to a smooth stop right in front of her. This time, I got out. I stood there looking at my home, my real home, and then down at the sister who had tried to bury me. "Brooklyn, please," she sobbed, reaching for my hand. "I'll give it back. I'll sign whatever you want. Just tell the bank I made a mistake. Tell them I was confused. They're going to take my condo. They're going to ruin me." I looked at her, and for a second I felt a flicker of the old sister-brother bond. But then I remembered her face when she tossed my boxes into the rain. I remembered the way she laughed when she told our parents I was a charity case. "It's too late for confused, Alina," I said, my voice steady. "The bank sold the debt. They didn't want the headache of a fraudulent title claim, so they offloaded the $1.2 million lien to a private investment group." She looked up, a tiny spark of hope in her eyes. "Can we talk to them? Maybe they'll give us a payment plan?" I pulled a crisp blue folder from my jacket pocket and handed it to her. "You don't have to look far. I'm the managing director of that investment group. I bought your debt for 80 cents on the dollar, Alina, which means legally you don't owe the bank anymore, you owe me." The color drained from her face until she was ghostly pale. You planned this. From the very first rumor at Thanksgiving, you wanted me to steal it." "I didn't want you to steal it, Alina. I expected you to. There's a difference. I gave you every opportunity to be a sister. I told you I was in trouble, and instead of throwing me a rope, you tried to drown me so you could take my boat. I just made sure the boat was anchored to a rock." I leaned down so I was eye level with her. "Here's the deal. I'm filing the paperwork to clear the fraud charges so you don't go to federal prison. I'm not a monster. But in exchange, you are signing over your interest in the family trust to cover the costs of this lesson. You're moving back into a studio apartment and you're going to get a real job. No more Instagram luxury, no more fake success." "You can't do this," she whispered. "I already did," I replied, standing up. "The movers are here in 10 minutes to take what's left of your things to a storage unit. I've already changed the codes on the gates and the smart locks." As the moving truck pulled up, I walked up the steps to my front door. I paused at the threshold, the same place where she had mocked me just days before. I turned back one last time. "Oh, and Alina, next time you try to take someone's foreclosed estate, make sure you check who owns the bank." I stepped inside and closed the door. The click of the lock was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. The anatomy of my revenge was complete. It wasn't about the money, and it wasn't even about the house. It was about showing her that while she was playing house, I was playing the long game. And in the long game, the person who holds the keys always wins.